Your life right now is a reflection of what you believe, not what you wish were true, not what you tell people you believe, what you actually, quietly, deeply believe about yourself, about what you deserve, about what is possible for someone like you. And here is the part that changes everything. Most of those beliefs were never chosen. They were installed. Before you had the capacity to question them, before you had enough life to know there were other options, before you understood that the conclusions you drew from early experiences were not facts, they were stories. Stories written by a version of you that had very little information, and those stories have been quietly running your life ever since. That ends today. Here's the first thing you need to understand. And once you see this, you cannot unsee it. Your beliefs don't just affect what you think, they affect what you see. The brain does not work like a camera. It does not passively record reality as it is. It actively filters reality through what it already believes, which means two people can walk into the same room, the same opportunity, the same conversation, and see completely different things. The person who believes they're capable sees possibility. The person who believes they're not good enough sees evidence of their inadequacy. Same room, same opportunity, completely different reality, because the brain is not searching for truth. It is searching for confirmation, and it always finds what it's looking for. But here's what you're missing about your own beliefs. They don't feel like beliefs. They feel like facts. This is the trap. The person who believes they're not smart enough doesn't think I have a limiting belief about my intelligence. They think I'm just not that smart. That's just how it is. The person who believes they always fail before success doesn't see a pattern to examine. They see their life, their history, their proof. The belief has disguised itself as reality, and reality, by definition, cannot be questioned. This is how the ceiling stays in place, not through force, through disguise. The moment you see the belief as a belief, not a fact, not reality, not just how things are, the disguise drops. And when the disguise drops, everything becomes workable. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because this next piece is the one most people avoid. Your comfort zone is not protecting you. It is trapping you. And the trap is not built from circumstances. It is built from belief. Specifically, the belief that what you have now is the most you can safely expect. That wanting more is dangerous. That reaching further will lead to failure and embarrassment and the specific pain of having tried and not made it. And so you stay. Not because the opportunity isn't there. Because the belief says the opportunity isn't for you. The ceiling feels real. The ceiling feels solid. The ceiling is a story, and stories can be rewritten. Let's talk about where your beliefs actually came from, because they didn't start with you. Every belief you hold about yourself has an origin, a specific moment or series of moments where raw experience was taken in and turned into a conclusion. A child fails at something in front of people who matter. The conclusion arrives fast. I'm not good at this. I shouldn't try things I might fail at. Being seen struggling is dangerous. Those conclusions made complete sense in that moment. The nervous system was doing its job, drawing lessons from experience, trying to protect you from repeating what hurt. But here's the problem. The lesson stayed. Even after the situation changed. Even after the child became an adult with entirely different resources. Even after the environment that taught the lesson was left behind decades ago. The conclusion drawn at 7 years old is still running the decision-making at 35. Not loudly. Not obviously, quietly. In the background, as the automatic resistance that arrives before the conscious mind has even fully formed the thought. You felt this. The opportunity appears. You feel something move in you. excitement, possibility. And then, a half-second later, something else arrives, a reason it won't work. A memory of when something similar failed, a voice that sounds like wisdom but feels like fear. That voice is not wisdom, that voice is the old conclusion. Still running, still protecting you from a threat that no longer exists. Here's what you're missing about that voice. You gave it authority it doesn't have. Every time you listened, every time you let the old conclusion pull you back, shrink your reach, lower your aim, you reinforced it. You provided more evidence. The belief says, you can't do this. You don't try. The belief says, see, you didn't even attempt it. The evidence confirms the story. The story gets stronger. This is the loop that keeps most people exactly where they are. Not lack of talent, not bad luck, not circumstances. A loop. And loops have an entry point, which means they can be broken. Now here's the shift that most people never make. And it is the shift that separates the people who change from the people who understand change but never experience it. You cannot think your way to a new belief. Read that again. You cannot think your way to a new belief. You can understand a limiting belief completely. Name it. Trace its origin. See exactly how it formed and what it costs you. And still feel it running. Still feel the resistance before the risk. Still find yourself making the safe choice. Still watch the opportunity pass while the old story explains why that was the right call. This is not failure. This is the difference between intellectual understanding and embodied belief. Understanding lives in the mind. Belief lives in the body, in the nervous system, in the automatic response that fires before the thinking mind arrives. And those two parts, the part that thinks and the part that believes, can hold completely opposite positions at the same time. You can know you're capable and feel you're not, and the part that feels wins. Every time, not because it's more true, because it's faster. So if thinking isn't enough, what actually works? Here's the answer that changes everything. Experience, specifically new experience, repeated experience, experience that the body lives through, not information, not understanding, living. Here is what this means practically. The belief that you are not someone who follows through has evidence behind it. Memories of abandoned projects. Unkept commitments. The version of yourself you were going to become and didn't. You cannot argue with that evidence. You cannot positive think over it. You cannot affirmation your way past it. But you can add new evidence. Not big evidence, small evidence. Commit to one thing, something so achievable that failure is almost impossible. And then follow through. That act, that single, small, completed commitment sends a message, not to the world, to your nervous system. The message says, the old story is incomplete. One message doesn't rewrite the story, but 10 messages start competing with it. 100 start to drown it out, and at some point, not dramatically, not with a single moment of transformation, the new story becomes the one that feels true, because you've lived it into existence. Here's the thing about this process that nobody warns you about. It is not linear, and the non-linearity is exactly where most people quit. You build new evidence. Something shifts. The old story starts to feel less airtight. The resistance before a new action is slightly less, and then something goes wrong. One failure, one rejection, one day where the old pattern runs completely despite everything you've built, and the old belief comes back, loud, fast, certain. See, I told you. This is what always happens. Nothing changes. This is who you are. And it feels more true than anything you built before it. Because the old story has decades of practice, the new story is still fragile. Here's what you need to understand in that moment. That is not evidence the old story was right. That is the old story protecting itself. Beliefs are not neutral. They are self-preserving systems. They interpret failure as confirmation. They make one setback feel like a verdict on the entire effort. But a verdict requires evidence. And one data point is not evidence. It is one data point. The question is not whether failure happened. The question is what you do next. And what you do next is what actually decides who you are. Now let's go somewhere most mindset content refuses to go, because this is where it actually gets real. Your beliefs don't just affect what you try. They affect what you allow. What you allow into your life. What you allow people to do to you. What you allow yourself to want. What you allow yourself to keep when you actually get it. This is the dimension most people never see. The person who believes they don't deserve good things doesn't walk around thinking that. They just do things. Small, quiet things. Things that feel reasonable. Things with a logical explanation. They push away the relationship that was going well. They underprice their work. They stop just before the breakthrough. They find the problem in the opportunity. Not deliberately, not consciously. Through the belief, running silently. Through every relevant decision, producing outcomes that look like bad luck, but were always something more specific. A belief in action. Here's the hardest question in this entire script. Are you willing to sit with it honestly? What do you actually believe you deserve? Not what you wish you believed, not what sounds right, not what you'd say if someone asked. What do you actually believe in your quietest moments, in the gap between wanting something and reaching for it, about what is available to someone like you? That answer is your current ceiling. And that ceiling, not your circumstances, not the market, not the timing, not the people who haven't helped you, is the primary thing standing between where you are and where you want to be. That is not an indictment. That is a map. And maps show you exactly where to go next. Let's talk about identity, because this is the layer underneath belief, and it is the one that makes everything else possible or impossible. Your beliefs are organized around an identity, a sense of who you are, what kind of person you are, what people like you do or don't do. And that identity acts as a filter on everything. Evidence that confirms the identity gets absorbed. Evidence that challenges it gets rejected, not consciously, automatically. This is why a big win can feel hollow, why a new success can be immediately minimized, why you can achieve something significant and feel like an imposter inside it, because the identity hasn't caught up. The belief about who you are hasn't updated to include this new evidence, and so the success doesn't land. It doesn't become part of the story, because the story was already written, and the success doesn't fit. The shift happens at the identity level, not from "I'm trying to become someone who succeeds" to "I am someone who is building success," not from "I'm working on believing in myself" to "I am someone with a track record of showing up," not from performance, from decision. The identity you claim even before you fully feel it begins to organize your perception around it. You start seeing evidence that confirms the new story. You start making choices consistent with it. You start becoming, gradually and unmistakably, someone the old belief never predicted. Here's what you're missing about the voice in your head. The one that arrives when something good is close. When the opportunity is real, when the version of your life you actually want is within reach. It says something. Not always in words, sometimes just a feeling. A doubt that arrives so fast it disguises itself as wisdom. You're not ready. This is too good for you. Who do you think you are? You've heard it. Maybe from someone else at some point. Maybe only from inside, but you know the voice. Here's what changes when you understand what that voice actually is. It is not your voice. It is the accumulated conclusion of every limiting belief that was installed before you had the capacity to refuse it, every dismissal that became a conviction, every failure that was treated as permanent evidence, every message spoken or unspoken that said, "People like you don't get things like that." The voice uses your words, your memories, your specific fears. It sounds like truth. It sounds like you. But it is not the truth. It is the old story, speaking up precisely when the new story is about to have its moment. Here's the practice that actually works. Not an affirmation, not visualization, something more precise. Act as if the new story is already true. Not fake it, not perform it, act from it. There is a difference. Performing confidence is exhausting because it's not grounded in anything. It collapses under pressure. Acting from the new story means making the next decision based on who you are becoming, not who you've been. When the opportunity arrives, instead of asking, "Can I do this?" ask, "What would someone who has already decided they can do this do right now?" And then do that. Not perfectly, not without fear. Just do the next move, and the move after that. And the belief follows the action, not the other way around. The confidence you're waiting to feel before you act is actually produced by acting. The self-trust you're looking for is built from the track record of acting when it was uncertain. You don't wait for the belief to arrive and then move. You move, and the belief builds itself from the evidence of the moving. Here's something that most mindset content completely misses. The people who genuinely changed what they believe about themselves didn't do it through inspiration. They did it through repetition. Small, unglamorous, daily repetition. Showing up when they didn't feel like it. Completing things when quitting was easier. Making the honest choice when the comfortable one was available. Not because every instance felt meaningful. Not because they always felt motivated. Because they understood something essential. Every action is a vote, not for what you achieve, for who you are. Every time you follow through, you vote for being someone who follows through. Every time you speak honestly when it costs something, you vote for being someone with integrity. Every time you choose the stretch over the safe, you vote for being someone who grows. The votes accumulate. And at some point, quietly, without announcement, the identity shifts. Not because you decided to believe something different, because the evidence made it inevitable. Let's talk about the environment. Because beliefs don't live in isolation. They are constantly being reinforced or challenged by the world around you. And most people, when they decide to change their beliefs, focus entirely on the inside. The self-talk. The mindset, the inner narrative, and they forget that the environment is running its own program on them every single day. The people you spend the most time with are modeling what is normal, what is possible, what people like you do. If everyone in your environment is operating inside the same limiting story, if the conversations, the assumptions, the shared understanding of what's realistic all confirm the old belief, you are swimming against a current every single day. Not impossible, just harder than it needs to be. New inputs matter. New evidence of what is possible matters. New environments where your potential is assumed rather than doubted, those matter enormously. Not because you need permission from others to believe in yourself, because the mind that is building a new story builds it faster when the world around it is providing supporting evidence rather than contradicting it constantly. Choose your environment deliberately. Here's the final layer, the deepest one, the one underneath everything. The beliefs that limit you most are almost never about specific things you can or can't do. They are about what you are worth, not in a material sense, in the fundamental sense, whether your life matters, whether your dreams are worth pursuing, whether you deserve the good things available in a human life, whether you are at the most basic level enough. And this is where it gets very quiet and very serious, because a person who does not believe at the deepest level that they are enough will build a life that reflects that belief, not intentionally, not consciously, but accurately. They will make themselves available for things that cost more than they give. They will minimize their needs before anyone else can. They will accept what is offered rather than ask for what is deserved. They will be more forgiving of everyone around them than they have ever been with themselves. And they will wonder why the life they're living doesn't feel like theirs. It doesn't feel like theirs because they never fully claimed it. And they never fully claimed it because some part of them, the part that holds the oldest belief, wasn't sure they were allowed to. If that is anywhere close to your experience, that is the belief that needs your attention most. Not whether you can succeed, whether you believe you deserve to. Here's where we leave this. Not with a list, not with the 10 steps, with the truth that makes everything else make sense. The life you are living right now is a reflection of what you believe, not what you wish you believed, not what you're trying to believe. What you actually, quietly, deeply believe about who you are, what you deserve, what is possible for someone like you, and every single piece of that belief, every ceiling, every limit, every story was formed, which means every single piece of it can be reformed. Not easily, not quickly, not without setbacks and the old voice and the days when the new story feels thin, but genuinely, completely, in ways that don't just change what you do, but who you are. The person on the other side of this work is not someone new. They are someone uncovered, the version of you that was always there underneath the old conclusions, the inherited stories, the beliefs that were built for a world that no longer exists. Still there, still there, still waiting, still yours. You don't have to become someone different. You have to stop believing you're someone less. That's the work, and it starts exactly here, in this moment, with the next choice you make. Make it like someone who has already decided who they are, because you have. You just did.